Hello, welcome to Share with Merit. I am Merit, and this is the next video in my series, The 3Bs for a Holiday on Your Terms, where I'm going in depth into the 3Bs, beliefs, boundaries, and behaviors. And this is the boundaries video. So have a seat. There's a lot to talk about. Boundaries, wow. Where do I even start? Well, I'm going to start with I think not really a definition, but just to kind of explain the continuum of boundaries. Okay. So on one hand, one extreme, you have total enmeshment, they call it, where you don't even know where you start and the other person ends, right? It almost feels like you're one person, and it's not in a healthy way, because that isn't healthy. You are an individual and they are an individual, right? And so you have enmeshment on one side of the continuum, and on the other side you have complete cutoff, right? Absolutely no contact. So that's the continuum. Every relationship has boundaries of some sort, right? From the enmeshment to the cutoff, those are going to be unhealthy relationships. And as you get toward the middle, where you have a healthy relationship, you have healthy boundaries. I am me, you are you. We come together, we share time and space, but we respect each other. We respect our differences. We respect that we can disagree on things, and still vote each other's victories, right? And so everywhere in between. And obviously, probably the goal is to have those healthier boundaries, more relationships with healthy boundaries, where you have that mutual respect and understanding. But easier said than done, right? And a lot of times where we really have to learn to set boundaries is in our family systems, right? And as if our family systems tend to repeat themselves in adulthood, which they often do, if we don't stop and try to understand them, why they aren't working and how to change them, we'll repeat them over and over and over, right? And so if you come from a family system where the boundaries are not healthy, either on the enmeshment side or on the cutoff side, then until you learn to have healthier boundaries with others, you'll keep doing the same thing with friends, with colleagues, with partners, right? You'll tend to maintain those same unhealthy boundaries, right? And it really comes down to authenticity, as it often does in my worldview, right? That when you have those unhealthy boundaries, how much of your authentic self can you really have in those relationships, right? Because if you're completely enmeshed with someone, and maybe I shouldn't say completely, but toward that end, right, are you giving up part of yourself to make that relationship work, to enmesh with the other? Are they doing that to you, right? Maybe you're more of the dominant one and they're more submitting to you, who they are, and letting go, of who they are, because your energy is so strong, and taking away from their authenticity, right? But you're also not able to be authentic, whether you're the sort of alpha or the beta, because you're, the cost of getting things done your way is loneliness, right? Because you can't have that mutual relationship where the other person also gets to be seen and heard, right? And then obviously in a cutoff, there's no relationship, but even short of that, right? That, there's a lot of family systems where the interactions are coming from a place of defensiveness, right? That, you can't be fully you because I can't be fully me, right? That for whatever reasons that I need you to stay away, right? Because I'm too scared to be vulnerable, right? And that's a barrier to authenticity, right? And that's where you get to start to decide how you want to have relationships with others, right? And it gets very complex and very individualistic, right? Not just with you, but in each relationship that you have, because maybe there's a family member where you have good, healthy boundaries and it's wonderful, but there's another one where not so much, or a few where not so much, right? And then you have all these other people in your life. So let me try to explain this in my Merit way. And my Merit way of explaining this is that, and I touched on this in the last video about being seen and heard, and being authentic with oneself. And when you can be fully authentic with yourself, it's as though you have no mask, right? You have no protections. You're completely honest with yourself, and you know and love and appreciate who you are. So no mask, right? That's the most vulnerable you can be. The least vulnerable you can be is in a room full of strangers, maybe carrying ammo or something, just where, you got to armor up, you got to have the thickest mask, you got to be completely protected, right? That, you don't know anybody in this room, and you don't know what they're capable of, right? And so, again, those are the two kind of extremes. And as you have relations with other people, it becomes a question of, who can you have just the thinnest of masks with, right? That's who you want in your inner circle, right? And these are healthily boundaried relationships, okay? Because you can be you, they can be them, and you can share that time and space in an authentic way, right? And if you're lucky, some of those people will be family members, right? And there's a lot of that around family and obligation, that family should be our closest people, but they often are not. And you know why? Because they're just people. Just because they're family doesn't, the only requirement to be a parent is fertility, right? Or adoption, right? That's it. There's nothing that says, oh, when as a child is brought into this world, that we are going to be obligated to them and they're going to be obligated to us, and it's going to be wonderful and beautiful, right? I think that's most people's intentions, but we get derailed pretty quickly often. Ego steps in and woo, all bets are off, right? And so you want to start looking at what is your family system, family of origin system, and what were the boundaries, and probably still are, are they toward the enmeshment? Are they toward the cutoff, right? And what kind of adjustments would you like to start making so that you can have deeper, authentic connections with others, assuming you want that, right? And to get a little practical, because I know I can get a little, what's the word? Theoretical. Thank you. I like to also, in this context, talk about the 4 main communication styles, because this is how we really start to work on the boundaries. It's like, okay, fine, Merit, great, I get these concepts, but what do I do about it, right? Well, another thing I've heard this over the years. I don't know. I wish I could quote whoever said it, but if you're concerned about how someone's going to react by setting a boundary, that's evidence the boundary needs to be set. Okay. Because a lot of times we're, hesitant to set a boundary because it's going to change things. Right. And if you saw my last video, well, I'm going to keep doing it because it's the way we've always, this relationship's always been this way. So I'm not going to change it, even though it's not what I want. Right. But it's too scary to go in and try something different because I don't know what the other person's going to do. Well, if that's the case, that's right there. First sign you need to start setting a boundary. You need to start doing something different with this person if it's not a healthy relationship. Right. And it looks often like how you communicate. Right. So I'll just define what the 4 communication skills, styles are first, and then talk a little bit more about it. So passive disrespects you. Passive aggressive disrespects everybody. Aggressive disrespects the other, and assertive respects everyone. And I talked about this in the first video. Because, and I gave some examples of how, or at least one example of how you can use an assertive communication style to work with someone who you need to set a boundary with. And, I'll share because it's what I do from time to time. So I had a very, I would say, it was kind of complicated because my mom would try to enmesh with me and I would pull away. So it was both enmeshed and distance, right? She would try to enmesh and I would pull away, right? And so we never really gelled ever. And there was a point at time where I tried to address this with her because I wanted to have a more authentic relationship. She's my mom. And it got to the point where I had to learn not to disengage from her, right? Because that was my part in it. But I had to learn how I could be authentic with her, but also still feel protected from her trying to enmesh with me, right? And so I remember probably our last conversation we had where I had come to this awareness and I realized, oh, first of all, she's emotionally very, very immature, right? And so I had to understand that in order to let go of my own defenses that I was trying to get. She was older than me, so why wasn't she behaving better? And why wasn't she more emotionally intelligent? Why couldn't she just be my mom, And I had to get past all of that stuff to realize, oh yeah, she's just a person who had some kids, and has her own story and her own background and her own reasons why she's not able to have healthy boundaries, right? But I was gonna at least do my part and try to show up in that relationship as best I can in an assertive way. And what it essentially looked like was, I remember the last conversation we had, I was being calm. I was letting her know I cared about her and I loved her. And my wish was that we can work together and resolve this and have a closer relationship. And unfortunately, her response was just rejection. She just kind of upped the ante and got worse and worse the more I tried to have a healthy relationship with her. And the lesson there is that, if it's not really worth having a relationship with someone who isn't going to be able to to love and respect you, for starters, right? And have that somewhat of an authentic connection with you. Now it can end up being somewhere on that continuum. I'm not saying that, oh, if it doesn't go your way, cut them off. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is they'll show you who they are as you set these boundaries. And hopefully, and I've seen it many, many times, is, this goes well. So the example I gave, it didn't end the way I would have liked it to, but it gave me enough information to decide how much I could have my mom in my life moving forward, right? How much I could have that person in my life moving forward. And importantly, really importantly, I was able to release any, expectation I had about her and about the relationship. That was key, right? Because you can only work with the person that's in front of you, right? They can never be other than who they are, unless they change that, right? So, but my point being is that when I had those conversations with her, um, I didn't, I wasn't passive. I didn't just let her sort of bull over me. I wasn't passive aggressive. I wasn't, well, that's what I had been doing for years, to be honest. I had been in front of her, nice and towing the line and being the good daughter. And then, in my own life going, what the hell is going, and it was like, I don't like this. Right. But I didn't have the ability or the courage, to be different with her until I did. Right. And then being different with her again looked like, I love you, I respect you, but I also love and respect me. And, I'm going to do my part in this relationship to make it work. And I hope that you'll do yours. Right. That's what it looks like. It's not overly complicated, but it's really hard to do. It's really hard. The feelings get in there and those old patterns get in there. And I will also say that as you do set boundaries, well, and I'll just share. In my case, being able to set them with your mom, if you could do that, you could set them with anybody. So there's that too. But often, and you start slow, put a toe in the water, maybe a colleague or someone where, you want, because you really want to practice that assertive communication style. That is so key. So I know I'm talking about boundaries, but again, the theoretical part is one thing, but how to really comes down to how you communicate, the words that you use, the language that you use. Language is so important. It is so powerful, right? If you come at somebody, well, you need to do this and you need to, we need to have a healthy boundary. And that's because you're not, forget it. Right. I statements, right? That's another form of healthy communication style is, I want this relationship to work. Here's what I am willing to do. Here's what I am asking for, right? And the thing about I statements is it's almost, actually, I'm going to say it's more important that you don't use the word you, right? I feel this way. I'm going to do this. I would like this, right? So you state how you feel, which is respecting you, and you share what you're going to own, what's your part, and you ask for what you want. That's the three parts of the I statement, right? And you just try to avoid the word you, because anytime anybody comes at me with you, what am I going to do? I'm going to get defensive, right? It's a non-starter. Okay, so those are my thoughts on boundaries, and let me know if you have any questions or comments. You can always find me at shareitwithmerit.com, and look out for the next and final video in this series on behaviors.